class PM. The previous class we have studied about the reflex actions and the path taken by the reflex actions, and we have seen that these are the spontaneous actions which respond to the stimuli. Right? Now let us learn about the next concept, which is human nervous system. We all know that I told you that there are two ways to bring in coordination in case of animals. One is nervous system and the other is endocrine system. So let us deal with the nervous system. As we all know, like when you look at this cellular organization, every individual had started the life as a single cell, right? And from the single cell, the life evolved out as a multicellular organism, right? There are even unicellular organisms too, but when the cell has evolved out as multicellular organism, these organisms are called as higher organisms, which are embedded, like provided with so many processes in the body, right? And every process has to coordinate, and there should be some connector between these different organs so that the body functions normally, right? So this nervous system is the one which will help in bringing in coordination in case of most of the multicellular organisms or higher organisms. So let us do with the human nervous system. So this human nervous system is a most complex process, or you can say it is a most complex system in the body, which is divided into two parts as cranial nervous system and peripheral nervous system. It is called as CNS and PNS. So this human nervous system which is present is divided into two as central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is made up of two different components such as brain and spinal cord. So the central nervous system comprises of two components like brain and spinal cord. At the same time, this peripheral nervous system is further divided into two parts like autonomous nervous system, voluntary nervous system. Further, this voluntary nervous system is divided into sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So this is the flow diagram of the components of the nervous system in case of human beings. As I've told you, the central nervous system comprises of brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is further divided into autonomic nervous system and voluntary nervous system, where the voluntary nervous system is divided further into sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Now, let us learn about the central nervous system, and under which you are going to first learn about brain. So, the central nervous system, as I've told you, it comprises of brain and spinal cord. This brain is also called as encephalon. What is it called? The brain is otherwise called as encephalon. It is located in the skull region, right? Where is it located? It is situated in the head, and you can see that it is the widest and uppermost part, right? It is the widest and uppermost part of the central nervous system. So the brain is present on the uppermost part of the central nervous system, and it is the site for high coordination, right? It is actually site for the higher coordination. As I've told you, all these messages are transmitted through neurons to the brain, where the brain analyzes the information and sends it back to the organs, right? So this brain is situated in a hard bony box. Okay, when you touch your scalp and see, your scalp is very hard and tough, right? And you might have seen the skeleton structure, right? When you look at the skeleton structure, you see that the brain is surrounded by hard structure of bones, which is said to be a bony box or known as cranium. Cranium surrounds the brain, right? And you know, this cranium which is present is made up of 33 bones, where there are like 8 flat bones and the rest are normal bones. So this cranium which is present, you see that this cranium or the cranial cavity which is present, it will protect the brain inside your like bony box, so that your brain doesn't get mechanical shocks or injuries. That is the reason, even if you have, like when someone hits on your head, your brain doesn't get damaged, because this hard, tough membrane which is present, it will protect your brain inside the cranium. And there is a fluid which actually flows in the cranium, and this fluid is said to be cerebrospinal fluid. There is a fluid which flows between the cranium and the brain, which is said to be cerebrospinal fluid. It is just like a small balloon kind of structure which keeps which acts as a shock absorber. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid acts as shock absorbers. They act as shock absorbers. So what do this fluid do? The fluid keeps lubricating your brain. At the same time, it will protect, it will act as a cushion, so that even if there is any injury, the brain doesn't get damaged. So it acts as a shock absorber. You know the function of shock absorber in your four-wheelers and two-wheelers, right? They compress, like when there is sudden jerk or a brake, they get compressed so that your bike or four-wheeler doesn't get spoiled. In the same way, this cerebrospinal fluid which is flowing throughout will keep your brain intact, so that it is not injured by some mechanical injuries or shocks. Now, when you look at the structure of the brain, actual structure of the brain, you see that it is a soft organ. We all know it is a soft organ. And you know what would be the weight of your brain? It is around 1.2 to 1.4 kg. That is 1/6 of your body weight. Okay. It weighs around 1.2 to 1.4 kg approximately. Okay, it weighs around 1.2 to 1.4 kg, and 90% of the weight of the central nervous system is in the brain. That means you have a nervous system, brain, spinal cord, everything, right? 90% of the weight is in the brain. I have told you that this nervous system comprises of a component called nerve cell, right, which is also called as neuron. And there are 100 billion neurons in the brain. How many neurons are present? 100 billion neurons are present in the brain. Okay, there are 100 billion neurons present in the brain. And the brain is surrounded by three membranes which are said to be menings. And let us see, these menings are further divided, and the three membranes which are present in the menings are dura membrane, arachnoid and pia. Dura membrane, arachnoid. So these are the three menings which protect the brain. At the same time, the space between these menings is filled with cerebrospinal fluid, which always keeps protecting the brain. So you know that the brain is thrown into folds. When you look at a cauliflower, you see that when you take a cauliflower and paint it with red, and you see that the gaps which are present, they seem to be the folds of the brain, right? Your cauliflower resembles a brain. So your brain is also having folds inside the brain, and these folds are called as gyri and sulci. What are they called? The folds of the brains are called as gyries and sulcis. So they make the brain appear as if they are ridges or hoofs inside the brain. So this is how the brain, you can say the structure of brain is. And now when you look into the next part of the brain is divided into three different parts. Now let us see what are the three different parts of the brain. So this brain which is present is divided into three parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. So brain has three different parts called as forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Forebrain is the frontal part, midbrain is the middle section, hindbrain is the brain at the back. That is the back part of the brain. So now let us learn about this forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. So the forebrain which is present, it is the greater part, like the most of the portion of the brain is occupied by the forebrain. First let us do with the forebrain. The forebrain which is present, it occupies the major part of the brain. It is provided with olfactory lobes, cerebral hemispheres and diencephalon. So this this forebrain which is present, it is the site for touch, smell, you can say hearing and sight, that is to see. So all these properties, all these functions of the body are being controlled by the forebrain, like your touch, your smell, your temperature, your sight and your hearing All these have been controlled by the what you call forebrain. As I've told you, the cerebral hemispheres which are present, they are thrown into folds like gyres and sulcis, where these are said to be cerebrum. That's the reason we call it as also cerebrum. The forebrain is also called as cerebrum, and you see that these lobes, frontal lobe, parietal lobes, which are present in the forebrain, they take up the part of doing a specific function like hearing or seeing or taste or touch or smell or temperature. So all these are controlled by the forebrain. And the next is midbrain. When you talk about midbrain, it indicates that it is the middle portion of the brain, and this is also called as mesencephalon. And this midbrain which is present, it will control your reflex movements. It will control the reflex movements. We have studied that there are reflex actions which occur in the body. So this midbrain which is present, it will try to control the reflex movements, and the head, the neck, trunk, all this auditory nerve. Auditory is hearing, right? So your head and neck and your body is the trunk. All these are the stimuli which are received are being controlled by the midbrain. At the same time, the eye muscles and change in the pupil size. We know that when depending upon the light focus, the size of the pupil gets changed, right? Either it becomes smaller or larger. That means the dilating of the pupil is also being controlled by the midbrain. So what does forebrain do? It will take up the major job of various things like seeing, hearing, like smell, taste, and then temperature of the body, many things, right? The midbrain will control the responses which are sent to your head, body, and your neck. At the same time, it will also help in contraction of your eye muscles and dilating of pupil, and even the lens which is present in the eye is also being contracted and relaxed. Like the size of the lens is adjusted by the functioning of midbrain. The next, coming to the hindbrain. Hindbrain is the back part, like almost it has the back part of the brain is said to be hindbrain, and this hindbrain will run down as spinal cord. The hindbrain will run down as spinal cord, and you can say that this is also called as cerebellum. What is hindbrain called? Cerebellum. This is also called as cerebellum. Forebrain is called as cerebrum. Okay. So the cerebellum which is present, it will continue down as the spinal cord, and the major function, like it will control the breathing movement, that is breathing, heart rate. At the same time, the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels, like when blood is pumped out, the blood vessels contract and relax. So this contraction and relaxation of these blood vessels is also controlled by this hindbrain. So every part of the brain takes up a different task so that the coordination is brought in, and it will help in proper functioning of the body. So this is how the brain helps. Now coming to the spinal cord. So we all know the spinal cord is a cylindrical structure, and the reflexes take place in spinal cord, and the spinal cord which is present, it usually conducts impulses from sensory and motor organs, right? The spinal cord which is present, it will only take the impulses, that is information from the sensory organs and the motor organs, and at the same time it acts as a center for reflex actions, as I've told you, because the exchange of information which is present will take place in the spinal cord. As I've told you, if I have to pick my marker, my neurons which are present in my arms, those are what? Motor neurons. They take the information to my brain, that is to take it to the spinal cord. From spinal cord they reach brain, and brain will read the information, relay it to the spinal cord. From the spinal cord they reach the tip of my finger, so that I'll pick my marker and start writing. So this is how actually the impulses are sent. So that means this spinal cord is the center for collecting the information and transmitting the information, and it is also the center for controlling the reflexes, or you can say reducing the brain's work. That means the brain work is reduced by this spinal cord. So now let us next learn about peripheral nervous system. So the part of CNS is done. Now next is PNS. PNS is nothing but peripheral nervous system, and this peripheral nervous system has two components like voluntary nervous system and autonomic nervous system. So when you talk about voluntary nervous system, these are under the control, right? These are under the control of our will, where you see that these nerves which are present, they arise from central nervous system. They arise from central nervous system. So the brain will have a control of all these neurons. And when you talk about peripheral nervous system, that is which is sympathetic and parasympathetic. So this peripheral nervous system comprises of cranial nerves, spinal nerves and mixed nerves. This peripheral nervous system has cranial nerves, spinal nerves and mixed nerves. So what are the different types of nerves present in the peripheral nervous system? Cranial nerves, spinal nerves and mixed nerves. Now let us talk about each in detail. The cranial nerves, as I've told you, the name itself is indicating that means they arise from the brain. Okay, the cranial nerves arise from the brain. That's the reason they are called as cranial nerves. What are they called? They are called as cranial nerves and they are spread to various parts of the head. They are spread to various parts of the head and you know the number of cranial nerves is 12 pairs. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves which are present in the peripheral nervous system, which will carry the information both to the sense organs and to the motor organs. Then spinal nerves, 31 pair of spinal nerves are present. How many pair of spinal nerves? 31 pairs. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. The name itself is indicating that they originate from the spinal cord. So these 31 pairs which are originated, they are actually long, spread throughout, so that they can carry the information to different parts. So the cranial nerves are present in the brain, which will try to relay and transmit the information, and the spinal nerves which are present in the spinal cord, they are very long spread nerves which will try to carry the information to the other parts of the body. And at the same time, mixed nerves. What are mixed nerves? They have the properties of both cranial, that means they can take the information both from cranial and spinal nerves. These mixed nerves are also called as visceral nerves. What are they called? Visceral nerves. And these visceral nerves or mixed nerves which are present, they regulate the normal functioning of the body, like functioning of kidneys, your urinary bladder, your heart. All these are been provided with your visceral nerves. Visceral means what? Body organs, right? So all the body organs have this visceral nerves. And this is what your peripheral nervous system is, and this is how your human brain works. And you know, the largest cell in the human body is nothing but the nerve cell. It is the nerve cell. So these nerve cells will always help in, say it could be cranial nerves or spinal nerves or mixed nerves, or say like sensory neurons or motor neurons. All these are related in gathering the information, that is collecting the information and transmitting it to the effector organ, and at the same time the brain tries to take the information, analyze it and send it back to the spinal cord so that the spinal cord can pass it to the different parts of the body. So this is how they bring in coordination in case of human beings or animals.